in the heart of Germany, located picturesque Lake Laacher See. From the side, it looks like an idyllic picture, with crystal clear water, surrounded by beautiful trees, reminiscent of footage from fairy tales, which many put on their desks as a wallpaper, and I'm no exception either. However, if you pay attention to reality, under this calm lake, hiding the forces of the most powerful volcano, which can rightly be called real, giant. Every summer, tourists come here with pleasure to enjoy nature, take a boat ride, or just relax in the fresh air by the shore. However, in reality, they don't suspect. What is a kiloton monster sleeping under their feet, ready to throw up, which can fundamentally change the landscape and the fate of the people around. The area around Laacher See is densely populated. Combined with the geographical location, this place makes it especially meaningful. This is the center of Europe. It makes possible volcanic eruption especially disturbing, and is a serious risk factor. It could have unprecedented consequences if the volcano really starts erupting. The consequences can be massive natural disaster, with which modern humanity has not yet had experience. Millions of people will be affected in the short term, which will be in close proximity to long-term effects of the volcano. Can cover the whole of Europe, bringing destruction and disorganization into the structures of society, ecology, and economics. Last time this volcano woke up, 13,000 years ago. And let's go back in time to look. What consequences did this lead to? History can teach us a lot. Lake Laacher See, formed during one of the colossal eruptions, occurred in ancient times. Magmatic chamber beneath the surface of the earth plummeted. The upper layers of earth collapsed inside, creating a huge bowl. As a result of these catastrophic processes, over time the bowl partially filled with water and formed the most picturesque lake, which we see today. This phenomenon is a classic example of how do these volcanic lakes occur? Called calders. About 13,000 years ago, the territory of modern Laacher See survived the disaster, the consequences of which were felt not only by people, but also to ecosystems from France to Russia and beyond. This cataclysm was a significant milestone in the history of Europe and influenced the development of human societies, shaping their fates for centuries to come. Laacher volcano eruption, thrown into the atmosphere, more than 20 cubic kilometers, magmatic material, summoning one of the most powerful volcanic disasters in the history of Europe. For comparison, Vesuvius eruption power, the 79th year of our era, was almost 10 times smaller, underscores the seriousness of this threat. Firestorm, following the eruption, covered all living things within a radius of 60 kilometers, destroying vegetation, animals, and ancient human settlements. Hot lava flows flowed down, incinerating everything in its path, leaving behind a scorched earth and destroyed ecosystems. A giant ash cloud overshadowed the sun for a long time, what led to significant changes in climate and cooling for several decades, because of which the usual cycles of life were broken. Many species of flora and fauna could not adapt to such drastic changes. Scientists are convinced that the release of ash and sulfur compounds caused global cooling. That significantly changed climatic conditions and influenced human communities. On these lands, once people lived, representing the Federmesser culture, who made flint blades, bows and spears, and successfully hunted game. After the devastating explosion, Volcano territory exhausted and depopulated. Development of these lands was postponed for many thousands of years. What became a factor? Changed migration routes and cultural development in the region. The disappeared culture was replaced by a new Brahma. These people came from the south of Scandinavia, but pretty much inferior to the previous settlers in technology. And their weapons, for example bows, was unfamiliar to them, which led to their vulnerability to new challenges. In the process of developing a new territory, similar disasters have already happened in human history. Comparable scale. There was an eruption of Toba volcano in Indonesia more than 70,000 years ago, which almost led to the extinction of mankind. Research shows that then the human population declined to frightening 2,000 individuals. That set them the task of starting everything from scratch. Such disasters in our history. I previously wrote in an article, like humanity, 3 times went through the bottleneck. These events serve as a vivid reminder of how vulnerable human societies can be in the face of natural elements. How important it is to learn from the past to avoid similar mistakes in the future. At first glance, Lake Laacher See looks calm and peaceful. The water reflects the beautiful surrounding forests. Tourists leisurely boating, and locals enjoy walks along the shore. But if you look closely, you can notice the warning signs. Possible activity under the surface. Scientists report that began to record volcanic activity under the bottom of this lake, which creates legitimate concerns and encourages further research. In this area, these observations clearly demonstrate that beneath the peaceful surface hides a potential threat, and if not take action, this could have serious consequences. Seismic stations periodically record a series of small earthquakes. That, in turn, indicates the movement of magma in the depths of the earth. Scientists have systematized all the signs, restless situation, and presented them as several key factors, which cause serious concern. Carbon dioxide emissions, recorded on the southeastern shore of the lake, prove that magma moves beneath the Earth's crust. Such emissions, considered one of the typical precursors. Future eruptions, earthquake series, which from time to time are registered under Laacher See, also indicate a possible rise in magma and increasing danger. Thermal anomalies, also fixed at the bottom of the lake, show abnormally high temperature, which indicates an ongoing volcanic activity and the likelihood of future eruptions. Moreover, the view from space also indicates the rise of and surface expansion in the Eiffel area that may indicate serious underground processes. Scientists believe, what does this have to do with mantle plume growth, which represents vertical flow of hot magma rising from the Earth's mantle? All of these factors are of major concern and confirm what the situation requires careful research and surveillance to prevent possible disaster. Despite the efforts of scientists, accurately predict the date of the next eruption of this volcano, not yet possible. This, and unsurprising, because science has not yet reached this level to accurately predict volcanic activity. Unlike space events, which are much easier to model, behavior of magma and tectonic plates at the depth of the Earth remains unpredictable. Hence the difficulties predicting earthquakes and volcanoes. Because we are dealing with forces which can merge and separate. The slightest change in pressure and tempera and Timbeckers In one thing, scientists agree. The volcano is active and a new cataclysm is only a matter of time. Most scientists assumed that volcanic activity in Eifel left in the past. However, combining all observations, it becomes clear that something is brewing under the heart of northwestern Europe, claims geophysicist Roots Kreimer. Be within a radius of tens of kilometers from this potential. The volcano is completely unsafe now. And that raises a lot of questions and fears among locals and tourists. Because there is a risk of repeating the sad fate of the Romans, faced with the eruption of Vesuvius. In the 79th year, this threat creates huge stress for citizens and requires special care from them. Assume changes will start with small tremors, but then a powerful explosion will follow, which will assert its power and inaccessibility of nature. In this case, the air will be filled with poisonous ash, hot gas mixtures. Pumice and stones quickly cover the neighborhood. Within a radius of 40 kilometers, all living things will be destroyed, including flora and fauna, and also no cultural and historical monuments, which for centuries served as a symbol of faith and sustainability. Imagine you at a picnic on the shore, drinking beer, enjoying the sunset, and then the earth begins to tremble. After a few minutes, the air becomes thick from ash. Breathing is getting harder. The sun is disappearing, and behind the horizon rolls an avalanche of fire. You only have seconds to understand that the chances of survival are zero. In Paints describes the moment of disaster, geophysicist Kreimer, and his words sound like a warning to everyone who ignores the seriousness of the situation. Besides, ash from the eruption will cover a significant part of Europe, which will lead to aviation failure and complete span of logistics and transport systems. Even a relatively weak age of Jadli Okal in 2000s of 10th year led to the cancellation of many flights. A volcano eruption Laro. It will affect all areas of life in Europe, creating natural disasters. In many major cities, such as Germany, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, will start panic. Ash will clog the ventilation systems, causing a spike in serious health issues, especially with the respiratory system. Clean water problems will also occur due to water pollution. This could lead to humanitarian crises within many states. Sulfur emissions into the atmosphere. They can cause the so-called volcanic winter. The temperature on the planet may decrease. This will have a negative impact on agriculture and will lead to severe crop failures. Ultimately, such an extraordinary situation will create shock consequences for food supply, and supply volumes will be sharply reduced. Expected 2 to 3 years after the eruption, price tags for basic food products take off to heaven. The food crisis will affect many countries in the region, causing instability in warehouses and trade chains throughout Europe. Now the most frightening. Scientists suggest an eruption could happen at any time, and therefore European geologists and volcanologists constant monitoring of the situation using the most advanced surveillance techniques. Geophysical sensors detect changes, pressure in the Earth's crust. Seismographs track even the weakest tremors. Geochemical analyses study the composition of gases rising from under the lake. These methods are usually able to identify some individual signs. Volcano awakening in a week, but should be remembered, the most powerful disasters usually develop rapidly and leave no chance for an early response. Despite all the achievements of science in the field of research and planet monitoring, at the moment we cannot predict the exact moment of volcanic eruption. We conquered the sky, sent a probe to the stars, cloned living organisms. But in the face of the force of nature, we still remain. defenseless as ants before a boot. Laacher does not ask, "Are we ready?" He doesn't read our predictions or warn in advance. He's just hoarding his power, and at some point, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 10, and maybe tomorrow, he will decide on his awakening, bringing down consequences on people, which they cannot predict, neither avoid. Let's hope that humanity will remain steadfast and can survive the disaster, as it has happened more than once to our distant ancestors. Important to learn from history and prepare for future challenges, because nature carries in itself as destructive and creative forces. Government and scientific organizations, it is worth developing protection systems and preparedness for such elements, upgrading infrastructure to ensure safety of its citizens. History is a universal teacher who teaches us that sustainability and adaptability can help us cope with many natural disasters. You need to be attentive to signals that nature sends us and pay more attention, monitoring potential threats to ensure safe existence for future generations. Any careful observation of nature and its devastating disasters can be the basis for rational decisions, which will help maintain as prior infrastructure. So are human lives. We need to prepare for challenges related to volcanic activity and develop early warning systems that will allow people to leave for safe zones with worsening conditions. And no matter how events develop, important to remember that in unity, strength, and only the joint efforts of humanity can help with challenges which will put before us nature in the future.